name's Mina, welcome to my channel Mina Reads, and today we are doing my fall TBR, which is very ambitious, but I am excited to share it with you. Y'all know me, I'm usually really heavy on my romances, and I feel like even though I always love setting a TBR, I'm like so easily distracted by Kindle Unlimited. It can be hard for me to get around to my TBR, but I feel like I just feel a lot of excitement about the books that I'm going to share with you guys. So yeah, like fingers crossed that this fall is going to be excellent in terms of reading. I have a lot of cool stuff to share. Okay, so the first two books that I'm going to show you are books that are on my 23 for 2023. So I want to just let you guys know about them. So I want to read Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin. Finally, James Baldwin is one of my favorite authors of all time, and one of my favorite books of all time is Another Country, and I just adored that book. I read it for the first time when I was in high school, I think when I was a sophomore, and it just completely changed my life. And studying that book is one of the reasons that I decided I wanted to study literature, like once I got to college and everything. So it just was like, I don't know, it was a whole thing for me. James Baldwin's a very transformative writer and has a lot of sentimental value for me. So I want to continue reading more of his books because I haven't read that many. I've only read 3 so far. So I want to read this one, and Giovanni's Room is a queer classic that I just haven't gotten around to, so I will be reading this one. And I also have another relatively short book, and it is The Vegetarian by Han Kang, and this is a translated fiction work from Korean, I believe. And so this book is about a woman who decides to become a vegetarian and the impact that that has on her relationship with her husband and her parents-in-law. This is kind of speculative. There's some body horror elements to it, and so I think it'll be perfect for like transitioning into the spooky season. So yeah, like I want to pick this one up. We got these two because I need to make a little bit more progress on my 23 and 2023. I've been doing absolutely horrendous with it. It's very sad, very tragic. So working my way through those, and then I guess speaking of spooky season, I have a few other kind of spooky related books that I'll share. So we have Night of the Living Rez by Morgan Tolley, and this book is a collection of short stories. So all of the short stories in this are set in a native community in Maine, and on the back it says, "This is a collection that examines the consequences and merits of inheritance. Night of the Living Rez is an unforgettable portrayal of an indigenous community and marks the arrival of a standout talent in contemporary fiction." So I've recently discovered a love of short stories, and so I want to read this short story collection for spooky season. I think it'll be a good one. And I also want to read more kind of like horror that's written by people of color. I think that that's like, it's something that's calling to me at the moment, so I'm excited to try this one out. And then speaking of horror by people of color, I have this book, which is a vampire story. This is The Gilded Stories by Jewel Gomez, and this is about a black woman who was born during slavery times, and she does get bitten by a vampire. And so this is about her life as decades and kind of centuries pass, and this is also a queer story, and so I believe it's about her finding someone who she's maybe going to spend the centuries with. And I have started this book. I read like the first 40 pages, I think. Yeah, I read the first 40 pages of this I want to say in 2018, but I never finished it, obviously, so I will be giving it another shot this year. I don't think that it was bad or anything, but I'm not sure what made me set it down, but I'm excited to pick it back up. Alright, and then we have My Soul to Keep by Tananarive Due, and I'm picking this one up because it's been compared to Interview with a Vampire, and I have recently discovered a bit of an obsession with that piece of media. I watched the movie last year, and I also watched the TV show last year, so I haven't read the book, but very obsessed with everything that Lestat and Louis had going on, and I just was very taken by it. So when I was looking at this, I've had this book on my shelves for a really long time, but I noticed that it was blurbed by Stephen King, and his blurb says, "An eerie epic bears a favorable comparison to Interview with the Vampire. I love this novel." Now, do I love Stephen King? Not necessarily, but him saying that it is comparable in some ways to Interview with a Vampire definitely intrigued me while I was like looking through my bookshelves trying to figure out what it is that I might want to read this fall. So this is about this African American woman. She's a journalist, and she's about to break the biggest story of her life, and the pretty much she has discovered the existence of this immortal, and the immortal's name is DeWitt, I believe. And so it says, DeWitt is an immortal whose ancient thirst for wisdom leads him to break the first commandment of his kind, not to fall in love. Together they are about to pay the ultimate price for their ambition and their desire. So I'm just really interested to read this. I have 2 books by Tanana Ragdu. I have this one, and I also have one that's like a haunted house book, and it's called The Good House. So I will be picking this one up, and if I enjoy it, then I'll definitely be diving into The Good House as well. So then I've got 2 classics that I want to read that it just feels kind of criminal that I haven't read them yet. Especially as an English major, you'd think that at some point in my life I would have come across these 2 books and had to read them, but I haven't. So I still have never read The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde, so I want to. And I've owned this book for a really long time now, I think maybe 5 years. So it just feels like it's time to read this, okay? It's time to at least crack it open and give it a shot. And so many people say that this is their favorite classic, so I just feel like it's time for me to give it a shot. This guy, he makes a deal for eternal youth, and so he stays young, but there's kind of this portrait of him that is slowly decaying as time goes on, and it's about kind of like this corruption of the soul, what you would do to stay beautiful and young forever, and I'm excited to check it out. So yeah, this is on the TBR. And then we have Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. I'm so obsessed with my edition of Frankenstein. This is one of the cloth-bound editions from Barnes & Noble, and I just love it so much. It's so cute. Like, I love the lightning and the little castle. It's just good. Not cloth-bound, leather-bound. Anyway, it's very cute, and it has red end pages, and I love it. One of my most prized possessions, but somehow I haven't read it yet. And I realized, like, picking it up off my shelf today, how short it is. It's like under 300 pages. So I definitely need to read this. I don't know why I haven't read it yet, but I feel like we all know what Frankenstein is about, and I'm really intrigued to see like how I'm going to respond to it, if I'm going to love it. And one thing that I have heard some people say is that the novel is really different, and like the monster, the way the monster is portrayed in the story is a lot different than the modern pop cultural portrayal of the creation that you typically see. So I'm interested to see what those differences are between how pop culture has presented the story and what the story is actually like. Alright, so then fall always reminds me, you know, just like the start of term, the start of school, going back to school, university vibes. Like, it just gives me that energy. So I have 2 books that are set in college and on university campuses that I want to read. So I have Real Life by Brandon Taylor, and this is about a young queer black man who attends a university in a midwestern town. He is getting a degree in biochemistry, and this is, from what I understand, is kind of like a coming of age, and it's about him being in this predominantly white town with a predominantly white friend group, and some of the experiences that he has as sort of the only black person in this community that he's in. So I'm interested to see how this goes, and one of my professors last year recommended this book to me, so I'm finally getting around to it. And then we got this one, The Adult by Bronwyn Fisher, and this is about a young girl who starts college. She's like 18 or so, and this is about her. She's kind of a little bit socially awkward, trying to find her footing in college, and she ends up meeting this woman. Why is it so overexposed right now? So yeah, so it's about this young woman. She ends up meeting this older lady. I don't know if the person is like a professor or something. But yeah, it says, she meets Nora, an older woman who takes an unexpected interest in her and is drawn unstoppably into Nora's orbit. So this is about her kind of getting drawn into this really complex, maybe kind of toxic relationship, and I'm excited about it. I enjoy reading about relationships of all kinds, you know, happy, sunshiny, romantic, fluffy relationships, or like really toxic, really intense, codependent, scary relationships. I just like reading about relationships in general. So this sounds interesting to me, and I love a good coming of age story. I love a good queer coming of age story, and I think that this will be a really fascinating read. And just because the synopsis makes things sound a little bit unsettling, it feels like it'd be perfect for going into fall. All right, so then another book that I have here is a queer historical fiction novel, and this is called The Charioteer by Mary Reynolds. And this book is about a young man named Laurie, and he is a World War II veteran, I believe. He endures an injury at Dunkirk, and he's sent to a veterans hospital. He befriends somebody, and this is kind of about like this companionship that they build. So he has a sort of like innocent, beautiful relationship with this one guy named Andrew, but then he meets another guy named Ralph, who is sort of, I don't want to say enticing in a bad way, but Ralph is more of a rebellious type. And it says, yeah, so Ralph draws him into a tight-knit social circle of world-weary gay men, forcing him to choose between the sweet ideals of innocence and distinct pleasures of experience. So it's kind of about this character Laurie after his time in the army, and him connecting like with his queerness and this relationship that he has with these two different men and what path he kind of chooses. So it sounds like it'd be really interesting, and something that you may not know about me, because I feel like once I started my YouTube channel, my reading life definitely took on a very different tone than it used to have. But when I first got back into reading in like 2017, 2018, I used to read a lot of historical fiction. I used to read a lot more literary fiction, contemporary fiction, sad girl lit. Like, I was heavy on that stuff, and I did not read that much romance at all. So crazy how the times have changed. But I kind of want to reconnect with my old self. So I have Blackwater Sister by Zen Cho. So this is about a young Malaysian lesbian. She's like 20 something. She's very stressed out. She kind of feels like her life is not necessarily on the greatest path. She has a tense, like kind of fraught relationship with her mother, and she's also in the closet at the moment. And so part of the storyline of this is that she is hearing / communicating with her grandmother's ghost. But yeah, it's a ghost story. It says, drawn into a world of gods, ghosts, and family secrets, Jess finds that making deals with capricious spirits is a dangerous business, but dealing with her grandmother is just as complicated. So it sounds like it could be kind of fun and quirky. There might be a little bit of a mystery element to it, but it just sounds like it'd be a good time. So I do want to give it a shot at least. So this next one that I'm going to show you is Tread of Angels by Rebecca Roanhorse, and this book is a really short fantasy western. So it's about this woman, and her name is Celeste, and pretty much her sister gets accused of murdering someone, and so she returns to her hometown to kind of save her sister and get her out of trouble and all that stuff. But it just sounds like it could be fun and interesting, and it's pretty short. It's also a very small book. Like, look at it in comparison to the next book that I'm going to tell you about, which is Yellowface. But like, look how short it is compared to it. Like, it's kind of crazy. So since we're here, I do want to read Yellowface by Rebecca. Why did I say Rebecca? Why am I calling her Rebecca? We're not on a first name basis. By R.F. Kuang. So this is about this woman named June, and June used to be best friends with a woman named Athena, and essentially Athena had passed away, but Athena was this like wonderkin debut author who was an instant bestseller. She's so amazing, so well regarded in the literary community, and then she passes away quite suddenly. So June decides to steal the manuscript that Athena was working on and publish it as her own. It's supposed to be a satire and a social commentary of like the literary landscape, and I have been meaning to read this for ages and ages and ages. And I want to say a huge shout out to my grandma, because she randomly said, hey, do you want some books? Buy some books on my Amazon account. So I finally bought this for myself, and I'm excited to read it. Okay, and then the last two things that I have to show you are fantasy books. Well, this one is technically a sci-fi, I guess. Sci-fantasy, whatever. This is The Stars Undying by Emery Robin, and this is just like a historical retelling with Anthony, Cleopatra, and Caesar. And so this is about a character named Altagracia, and she is on the run from her sibling, who is the ruler of their like empire at the moment, and she's on the run because reasons, and she ends up making an alliance with the Caesar character, whose name is, what is his name? His name is Matthias. And the Anthony character is named Anita, and so this is about them like joining forces against Altagracia's sister, who is in command. And yeah, this is queer, this is quality, it's sci-fi, it's a historical retelling. It sounds like it'll be interesting. It is not very well reviewed on Goodreads, but I kind of just feel like maybe it's a case of enough people not having their third eye open, but I'm woke as hell, so I think that I'm gonna enjoy it. I have a lot of faith that I'm gonna love it. So yeah. And the final book on the TBR is Master of Jinn by P. Djeli Clark, and this book is a this is like a steampunk fantasy. It is set in a like 1920s Cairo, I believe. And so we have our main character Fatima, and she works for this place called the Ministry of Alchemy, and she deals with occurrences and crimes that have to do with jinn, because in this world there's a portal between, sort of like, there's a veil that's open between the sort of magical world and the human world, and so there are a lot of magical creatures, specifically jinn, that live in Cairo, and she kind of investigates a lot of magically based crimes. And this is the second book in a series, so you should definitely check out the first one, which is called A Dead Jinn in Cairo, where you get introduced to the character. So this is my stack for fall. Hopefully I will get to a good amount of them. I don't know if I can count on myself to get to all of them, but it would be great if I could get to a whole bunch of them, and I'm really excited about them. But for whatever reason, I just feel really like pumped for fall, and I'm like already planning my Halloween costume, and it's a whole thing. Like I'm getting into the spirit, you know? So let me know what you're going to be reading this fall, and thank you so much for watching. So hopefully I'll see you in my next one. Bye, you guys. Mwah.